The slap landed as a flat crack in the bright hallway, then vanished into the hum of vents and monitors. Maddie Flores felt heat bloom across her cheek before her ears caught up. Her head snapped sideways, badge jerking on its plastic clip. For a second, all she saw was polished floor and the rubber toe of her shoe. The corridor rushed back in. Overhead lights buzzed. Disinfectant burned her nose. A linen cart squeaked to a stop, its driver frozen mid-step. Behind her, the glass doors of Conference Room B whispered shut. Through the tinted panel, men and women in suits shifted in their chairs, silhouettes against a glowing screen. No one stood. No one opened the door. No one. Victor Harlan rolled his wrist as if he had brushed lint from his cuff instead of skin. He did not look at Maddie. He turned, pushed the door open with the same hand that had struck her, and stepped back into the cool, carpeted room. Apologies. His voice floated through the gap. Where were we? The door closed with a soft click. Maddie lifted trembling fingers to her face. The skin was already swelling hot under her touch. She looked down the hallway, desperate for someone to meet her eyes. 2 nurses at the workstation rose almost in unison and drifted away, suddenly busy with charts. A transporter stared hard at his pager. The unit clerk bent over her keyboard, shoulders tight, the clack of keys a steady denial. Maddie's breath came shallow. Words pressed against the back of her tongue and went nowhere. Her gaze snagged on the frosted strip on the conference room door. Silverline Medical Center, Executive Boardroom. Below it, metal letters caught the fluorescent light. Victor Harlan, Chief Executive Officer. Her throat tightened. She straightened her scrub top, adjusted her badge, and walked away. Her shoes squeaked once on the tile, then blended into the hallway noise. The slap joined everything else the building absorbed. Monitors beeped. An overhead voice called respiratory to room 312. Somewhere a phone rang until it did not. The white hallway went back to looking clean. From the street, Silverline Medical Center looked like a promise. 12 stories of glass and steel rose over downtown Denver, catching blue sky by day and city lights at night. Brochures showed smiling nurses, grateful families, Victor in a dark suit, shaking hands beneath a banner that read, Compassion in Action. Inside, the story felt different. On cardiac, the charge nurse dropped her voice whenever Victor's name came up, even when he was 3 floors away. A surgery resident waited until he reached the parking garage to complain about staffing. A respiratory therapist checked the elevator display before stepping in, then let the doors close if Victor was already inside. No one could say exactly when the air began to tighten. It did not happen in a single meeting. It arrived in pieces. A nurse written up for unprofessional tone after asking why 2 positions on her shift had been cut. A tech's schedule suddenly blank the week after she reported a near miss. An email from administration reminding everyone that insubordination would not be tolerated in a high-stakes environment. In those early months, Victor rarely raised his voice. He did not need to. He sat at the head of sleek conference tables, hands folded, voice calm as he talked throughput and margins. Cameras loved him. So did the quarterly reports. The first time he hit someone, people were more stunned than angry. It was a stressful day, they said. A misunderstanding. The nurse left soon after. She signed papers in HR, shook hands with a tight-faced manager, and disappeared. The story stayed behind in half-finished whispers. You heard about Jenna, right? Do not put anything in writing. Just keep your head down. Complaints followed the proper channels. Human Resources logged them, opened files, promised to look into concerns. The phrases in their replies blurred together. We conducted a thorough review. We could not substantiate the allegation. We encouraged staff to use established processes. The processes ended behind frosted glass and brushed steel nameplates that all carried the same last name. On paper, Silverline thrived. Admissions climbed. Readmission rates dropped. Board members visited 4 times a year, clicked through slide decks, nodded at graphs. Victor shook their hands in the lobby, the same corridor where he had slapped Maddie. On the floors, people adapted. Nurses learned to sense him before they saw him. Conversations stopped when his shoes hit tile. Hands shuffled papers, adjusted IV pumps that did not need adjusting. Doctors watched him the way they watched unstable patients, measuring distance, calculating risk. A new graduate on med-surg watched Victor slap a colleague who had paged twice about a dropping blood pressure. The sound bounced off cinder block. The patient in the bed flinched. That night, the new grad opened the online complaint form, stared at the empty box, then closed it and typed a resignation instead. In a windowless break room that always smelled like burnt coffee and microwave leftovers, the staff wrote their own invisible handbook. Do not question him where anyone can hear. Do not flinch if he steps too close. Do not expect help if he turns on you. By late summer, the system ran the way Victor liked it. Numbers shown on screens, boardroom doors stayed closed. His name moved through the building in lowered voices. Everyone at Silverline knew who Victor Harlan was. None of them knew the name on the new employee file waiting in Human Resources. The file waited in a gray plastic tray on the corner of the HR coordinator's desk. A thin stack of paper metal clip pressed tight, name printed in clean black letters across the top. Cross Emily Ann. Outside, the morning sky over Denver was the color of clear glass. Air had that early fall sharpness that made people zip their jackets a little higher. Inside Silverline's lobby, the air was filtered and warm, carrying the faint scent of fresh coffee from the cafe and something citrus from the automatic air fresheners hidden in the vents. Emily paused just inside the sliding doors, letting the world sort itself into layers. The front desk with its curved white counter, the volunteers in bright blue vests, a family gathered around a stroller talking in low voices. The security officer by the metal detector hand resting on his belt, eyes scanning the room. Her own reflection hovered in the tall glass behind the reception desk. Dark hair pulled back in a practical knot, pale blue scrub top under a navy jacket. Hospital badge on a temporary clip name written in marker. The clip was crooked. She reached up and straightened it, fingers steady. "Morning," the security officer said, scanning her badge with a beep. "Morning," she answered. It was not the first hospital lobby she had walked into. They all smelled different and somehow the same, a layered mix of antiseptic, coffee, and worry. This one added the soft strains of piano music piped in from hidden speakers. The melody slid over polished floors and brushed past her shoes. An elevator opened on the far wall. A woman in a blazer stepped out, talking into a headset, a tablet clutched in her hand. Two orderlies pushed an empty stretcher past Emily Wheels, whispering along the tile. A boy in a hoodie sat hunched in a chair, picking at the edge of a paper wristband. His mother scrolled on her phone, one hand resting absently on his shoulder. Emily took it in a quiet click of details in the back of her mind. Number of security cameras, location of exits, the way the front desk staff glanced at the elevator bank whenever it chimed as if checking who might be inside. "Ms. Cross." The voice came from her right. A woman in a patterned blouse and HR badge approached, holding the thin file. "I am Dana, onboarding. Orientation is on the second floor. You found us all right?" "Yes," Emily said. "No trouble." Dana smiled, the practiced, neutral kind of smile people wore when they worked all day with strangers. She swiped her card, pressed the elevator button, and they stepped inside. As the doors closed, Emily glanced at the panel. 12 floors. A small keyhole next to a button marked Executive. The keyhole had faint scratches around it, the metal worn by frequent use. "Most of your work will be on Med-Surg 4th floor," Dana said, "but we like to start everyone with the full Silverline overview." The elevator hummed upward. Emily felt the familiar shift under her feet, the slight drop in her stomach like the first few inches of a descent before a jump. Her fingers brushed her badge again. The plastic was warm now from her touch. The orientation room had no windows. A long table, a projector, a tray of pastries already drying at the edges. A stainless steel carafe of coffee sat next to a stack of paper cups. 5 other new hires were already seated. 2 nurses, a physical therapist, a lab tech, and a young man in button-down and tie who introduced himself later as an IT analyst. They all wore the same temporary badge stickers, black marker slowly smudging as the morning went on. Emily chose a chair near the door. From there, she could see the screen, the table, and the hallway beyond the small square of glass in the doorframe. She put her bag on the floor so it would not block her feet if she had to move quickly. No one else seemed to think about where they sat. They took whatever chair was closest to the coffee. "Welcome to Silverline," Dana said, clicking a remote. The screen lit up with the same image Emily had seen in the brochure. Victor in a dark suit, shaking hands with a nurse whose smile looked just a bit too wide. Behind them, the lobby's glass wall glowed. "Silverline is committed to excellence in patient care," Dana said, reading from a script she probably knew by heart. "We believe in compassion, accountability, and teamwork." Photos flashed by. A nurse kneeling to talk to a child. A surgeon in a mask giving a thumbs up. A group of employees in matching T-shirts at a charity run. Emily watched, but her focus was not on the images. She watched Dana's hands as they moved with the remote, the way her fingers tensed slightly whenever a slide with the word compliance appeared, the way her eyes skipped past Victor's face and landed on a neutral place on the wall above him. One slide listed core values in bold letters: safety, respect, integrity. The words sat neatly lined up, each with a short definition underneath. "Silverline is a zero-tolerance workplace when it comes to harassment or abuse," Dana said. "We take all concerns seriously and investigate them promptly." Emily lifted her hand a little. "Can I ask something?" Dana stopped mid-click. "Of course." "What does the reporting process look like in practice?" Emily asked. "If a nurse has a concern about, say, a supervisor's behavior, who do they report to first?" Dana's smile did not change. She clicked back to the previous slide as if it would help her answer. "Concerns should be reported to the immediate supervisor or manager," she said. If that is not possible, staff can come directly to Human Resources. We have an anonymous hotline as well. Has anyone ever used it? Emily said. There was a brief pause, 1 second, maybe 2. The IT analyst shifted in his chair. The physical therapist reached for her pen. I'm sure it has been used, Dana said. I do not have those numbers in front of me, but we do encourage open communication. We want our employees to feel safe. Emily nodded. And if the concern involves someone high up, does HR still handle it? Dana's fingers tightened on the remote. The small white plastic squeaked softly in her grip. We handle concerns at all levels, she answered, in collaboration with leadership as appropriate. Each case is unique. The words were correct. The tone sat a half step behind them. Emily let it go. Pushing in the setting would not give her anything more. She sat back, eyes drifting to the door's small window. A shadow moved past, then another. Voices in the hallway rose and fell muffled by the wall. Dana moved on to benefits parking time off requests. The other new hires took notes, underlined parts about vacation days and health insurance premiums. One of the nurses asked if the cafeteria took payroll deduction. The lab tech wanted to know about scrubs allowance. When the slide with Victor's full face appeared again, Emily watched the room instead of the screen. No one said his name out loud. Dana referred to him as administration or leadership. The IT analyst glanced at the picture, then at the door, then back at his notebook. 2 hours in, they took a break. People lined up for more coffee. Someone opened the box of pastries and broke a glazed donut in half, leaving crumbs scattered on the cardboard. Emily stayed in her seat for a moment. She stretched her legs, rolled her shoulders once, then stood and crossed to the coffee table. Her path took her past the door. Through the small glass pane, she could see only a strip of hallway, tile floor, the base of a bulletin board, a hand gripping a chart, knuckles pale against the manila folder as someone passed by at a fast walk. She poured coffee, the liquid dark and steaming, and listened without seeming to listen. A new nurse, the one in floral scrubs, leaned close to the other med-surg hire. I heard the CEO is intense, she whispered. My cousin did travel nursing here last year. Said he is very hands-on. Hands-on how the other asked. The first nurse shrugged. She did not like talking about it, just said, do your job and stay off his radar. Emily's fingers tightened around the cardboard cup sleeve for an instant, then loosened. The coffee smelled burnt and bitter. She took a careful sip anyway. Ms. Cross, Dana called from the front of the room. I have your badge ready for you to sign. Emily walked back the temporary sticker on her chest, catching on the edge of her jacket. She peeled it off and handed it over. Donna slid a permanent badge across the table. Emily Cross, RN. Below her name in smaller letters, Silver Line Medical Center. Under that, a barcode and a tiny logo of 2 hands cupped together around a stylized heart. Emily clipped the badge to her scrub top. The plastic rested over her sternum, cool against her skin. 4th floor med-surg, Dana said. Your manager will meet you at the nurse's station after lunch. Got it, Emily replied. She glanced once more at the door, the slice of hallway, the world beyond this small windowless box. Then she picked up her bag and took her seat near the exit, again ready for the rest of the slides to finish, so she could see the part of Silverline that did not fit on a screen. Orientation ended with a quiz on infection control and a reminder to fill out direct deposit forms. The lights flicked on. Chairs scraped. The IT analyst gathered cables for someone else without being asked. 4th floor, Dana said again as she held the door. Med-surg nurses station is straight ahead when you come off the elevators. The hallway outside felt cooler after the windowless room. Emily followed the small cluster of new hires toward the elevators, then stepped into one alone when the group split to different floors. She pressed the button for 4 and watched the numbers glow in sequence. The doors opened to a different world. The med-surg corridor was narrower, lined with patient doors and rolling equipment. The air carried a faint mix of bleach-warmed IV fluid and something else that belonged only to inpatient units, that combination of human breath and plastic and time. Emily, a voice called from the nurse's station. A woman in navy scrubs with a manager badge stepped around a computer. Her hair was threaded with gray, pulled into a bun, so tight it looked like it had not moved all day. I am Lauren, unit manager. Welcome to 4 North. Her handshake was firm but brief, palm-dry fingers cool. Thank you, Emily said. Lauren gave her the tour. Supply room. Medication room, staff bathroom with the temperamental lock you had to jiggle twice to the left, once to the right. The charting computers lined along the wall, the whiteboard listing patient names and bed numbers. Silverline runs at high capacity, Lauren said. We stay busy. Our patients are sicker than a typical med-surg, more step-down level. You will pick it up. She spoke quickly, efficient, as if ticking items off a list. When they passed a doorway and a patient called out, her tone softened instantly, the smile reaching her eyes as she answered. Then it pulled back in as soon as they stepped away. They ended at a doorway with a handwritten sign taped at eye level. Staff lounge. Please keep door closed. Lauren touched the handle but did not push it open. "You will meet everyone here," she said. "They will tell you all the things I can and cannot say." The corners of her mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost not. "I'm glad you are here, Emily," she added. "I mean that. We have had a lot of turnover. We need steady hands." Her gaze dropped for a moment to Emily's hands resting at her sides. Long fingers, short nails, a faint white line crossing the left wrist. Lauren seemed to notice, then looked away. "If you have concerns," she said, voice quieter, "use the proper channels and document. Always document." Emily nodded. "I understand." Lauren left her by the lounge door with a promise to assign a preceptor after lunch. Emily watched her head back toward the station shoulders, squared a woman walking a line she had learned by heart. The lounge door was a heavy metal slab painted in off-white that did not quite match the wall. A laminated poster about hand hygiene was taped crookedly at eye level. Under the poster, the paint around the handle was smudged where countless fingers had pushed it open. Emily knocked once out of habit, then opened it. Inside the room was small and cluttered. A round table with mismatched chairs, a fridge humming in the corner with a piece of tape across the front that read, "Label your food" in thick black letters. A microwave sat on a shelf, its digital clock blinking 12 fusées. 3 nurses sat at the table phones out cups of coffee in front of them. Conversation stopped for a beat as the door closed softly behind Emily. "New hire," one of them said, not unkindly. "I saw you with Lauren." She was in her 40s, hair in a loose braid badge clipped to her waistband. "Patty Lopez, RN. I am Emily," she said, "Cross Med Surg." Patty stood to make room, pulling out the chair beside her with a scrape of metal on linoleum. "Sit, eat if you have anything. If you do not, welcome to the club." The others introduced themselves. A tall blonde nurse named Kelly, a shorter one with sharp eyes and a pixie cut named Sam. They made space on the table by moving a stack of old magazines and a lunch bag, with someone's name written half rubbed away. "You from Denver?" Kelly asked. "No," Emily said. "I moved here recently." "From where?" Emily hesitated half a second. "Out of state, southeast." Sam raised an eyebrow as if she heard the gap and filed it away. Then she nodded toward Emily's badge. "You worked med-surg before." "Mostly critical care," Emily answered. Some stepped down. A brief silence. That answer traveled around the table, picked up meaning as it went. This was not a new graduate. This was someone with years behind her. Patty wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. Her thumbnail traced a chip in the rim. "How much did HR tell you about this place?" she asked. "The part that is not on the slideshow." Emily thought of Dana's careful answers. The way leadership had replaced an actual name. The way the anonymous hotline had been mentioned, then moved past quickly. "They told me about patient ratios, benefits, parking," she said. Patty huffed out a quiet breath that was almost a laugh. "Of course they did." Sam glanced at the door, then stood and turned the microwave on, with the door slightly ajar, so it hummed for no reason. "White noise," she explained, "just in case." "In case of what?" Emily asked. "In case walls have ears," Kelly said softly. Patty looked at Emily for a long moment as if weighing how much to say to a person she had known for 10 minutes. "You need to know a few things," she said finally. "Number 1, you do not raise your voice at certain people. Ever. Number 2, if you see something that feels wrong, you bring it to the charge nurse privately. You do not page administration. You do not confront administration in a hallway. You do not try to reason with him." Emily let the pronoun hang for a second. "Him," she repeated. No one said the name. They did not have to. Patty's fingers tightened on the cup. The knuckles went pale, then relaxed again as if she had forced the tension out. "He likes control," Patty said. "He does not like questions. He thinks everything is a test of whether people respect him enough." Kelly shifted, her chair creaking. "My first year here, I watched him take a chart out of a nurse's hands and tear the notes in half because she called him twice about a patient he did not think was that bad. He yelled," Sam added. Then he smiled at the family. Emily listened. The coffee in her own cup had gone cool. She did not drink it. Patty stared down at the table. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped. "I saw him hit someone," she said. "Not just yell, not just grab an arm. He slapped her, hand to face. In the hall. She left 2 days later. HR said they would handle it." "Did they?" Emily asked. Patty met her eyes. "She does not work in nursing anymore," she said. The microwave hummed on door open, spinning emptiness around and around. Emily felt a small muscle in her jaw tighten, then ease. Her voice stayed level. "How long have you been here?" she asked. 8 years, Patty said. "Too long to pretend I did not know better. Too invested to walk away easily." "Why did you stay?" Emily asked. Patty shrugged one shoulder. "Patience," she said. "The ones who do not have a choice about coming here. The ones who are stuck with whatever leadership we get." She looked at Emily again. "I'm telling you this because you seem smart enough to listen," she said. "Stay off his radar. Do your job well. Document everything. And if you can find another place that pays decent and is not on fire, take it." Kelly nodded. Sam made a face like she wanted to disagree but could not find a reason that would hold. Emily let their words settle. She saw the fear underneath the frustration, the tired loyalty. It sat in their shoulders in the way they glanced at the door and the way they had turned the microwave on for cover. "I appreciate you telling me," she said. "I will be careful." It was a simple sentence. Patty studied her, looking for something behind it, maybe expecting tears or shock or bravado. She found none of those. "You do not look scared," Patty said slowly. Emily thought for a moment. "I have worked in places where yelling was the least dangerous thing happening," she said. "But I understand what you are saying." There was a beat of silence while the others tried to parse that. "ICU can be rough," Kelly offered. "Yes," Emily said, "it can." The overhead pager crackled, announcing a bed ready from the emergency department. Patty checked her watch. "Break is over," she said. "Come on. I will show you where we hide the good tape and the not-awful gloves." They pushed back their chairs. The microwave was switched off. The hum in the tiny room died. Back in the hallway, the sounds of the unit rose to meet them. Monitoring alarms, distant laughter from a family room, the squeak of rubber soles on wet spots that housekeeping had not reached yet. Patty walked Emily through her first few tasks, introducing her to patients, pointing out quirks. The woman in 412 who always tried to pull out her IV at night. The man in 408 who wanted every medication explained twice before he would agree to take it. Emily moved easily through the work. She listened more than she talked. She checked lines and drains with practiced hands. When a confused patient swatted at her wrist, she caught his hand, gently redirecting it without force, voice dropping to a calm, low rhythm that smoothed the spikes on his heart monitor. At one point, an orderly dropped a metal bedpan in the hallway. The crash was sharp, sudden, like a shot of noise through the corridor. Several heads jerked up. A medication cup rattled in its saucer in one nurse's hand. Someone cursed under their breath. Emily turned toward the sound, her body shifting in a single controlled motion. Her eyes tracked the source, checked for threat, then moved on when it was clear. Her shoulders did not jump. Her heart rate did not change. Patty saw it. So did Sam, who was charting nearby. Their gazes met for half a second over the rolling computer. Later, during a lull, Sam leaned on the counter next to Emily. "You jumped less than the crash cart," she said. "You a statue or something?" Emily clicked through a lab result. "Just used to loud noises," she said. From where Sam asked. Emily did not look up. "Travel jobs," she said. "Some places are louder than others." Near the end of the shift, the hallway outside MedSurg shifted in a way that did not show on any monitor. Voices thinned. The air seemed to pull tight. A unit clerk straightened the stack of clipboards 3 times in a row without needing to. A resident suddenly remembered he had a call to make and stepped into a stairwell with his phone pressed to his ear, though he did not dial. Patty glanced at the elevator display. The light over the doors glowed, coming up from 3. Her hand hovered near the edge of the nurse's station, fingers curling. "Do not ask questions," she murmured. "Just watch." The elevator door slid open. A man stepped out in a charcoal suit tie, knotted perfectly at his throat. His hair was cut precise, his shoes polished enough to catch the fluorescent light. A hospital badge hung from his jacket pocket, clipped low, not where clinical staff wore theirs. Victor Harlan walked down the hallway as if it belonged to him. Staff along the corridor recalibrated their posture without thinking. Backs straightened, voices dropped. A tech who had been laughing with a patient suddenly found something deeply interesting in the chart on her tablet. Victor's gaze skimmed the unit, taking in the beds, the equipment, the people. When it passed over Emily, she held it for a fraction of a second, then lowered her eyes to the chart in her hands the same way she had done for supervisors for years. He did not slow. He passed, trailing the smell of expensive cologne and whatever lived in the carpeted halls of the executive floor. Behind him, the unit exhaled. A nurse let out a breath she had been holding. The ward clerk rubbed a hand over her face. "That," Patty said quietly, "is who I was talking about." Emily turned another page on the chart. The paper rasped softly under her fingers. "I figured," she said. The next morning began the way hospital mornings always did, with 2 bright lights and too little sleep. Emily slid her bag into a locker, pulled on a fresh pair of gloves to check the glucometer, and listened while Lauren rattled through assignments at the nurses' station. The whiteboard was full. Every bed on 4 North had a name beside it. "Cross, you have rooms 410, 412, and 414, Lauren said. 410 is your easiest. Old pneumonia getting stronger. 412 is a fall with a hip fracture. 414 is a handful, but his daughter brings good coffee, so you are in luck." A few of the nurses laughed softly. The sound was tired but real. Emily copied the room numbers on her folded assignment sheet. Lauren tapped the top of the paper with her pen. 410 is Walter King, she said. "He is already awake most mornings before we are. He will tell you if you are late by 5 minutes. Her tone held a trace of fondness. Emily nodded and started with vital signs moving from room to room. She introduced herself to the hip fracture-checked neurostatus-adjusted pillows. She reassured the daughter in 414 who asked the same question twice about discharge dates and did not notice she had. Then she stepped into 410. The room was dimmer than the hallway. Someone had pulled the blinds almost closed, leaving a thin line of daylight across the floor. The television was off. A small radio on the bedside table murmured jazz at a low volume. Walter King sat propped up against his pillows, thin shoulders straight, oxygen tubing resting over his ears. His hair was white along the sides, the top mostly gone. Liver spots dotted his hands where they lay on the blanket. His eyes, the color of old bottles, were clear and sharp. "You are not Anna," he said as Emily came in. "No, sir," she answered. "I am Emily. I will be your nurse this shift." He looked her up and down, taking his time. Badge, scrubs, hands, face. "Where is Anna?" he asked. "Day off," Emily said. "She will be back tomorrow." Walter sniffed, not quite pleased, but not angry either. "She said she would introduce me to the new one," he said. "Guess that is you." "I suppose so," Emily said. "How are you feeling this morning?" "Like I have lungs full of wet cement," he said, "but the coffee is better than the army had, so I cannot complain too loud." She smiled at that and moved to the bedside monitor, checking the numbers. Oxygen saturation looked decent with the nasal cannula. Heart rate a little quick. Respiratory rate shallow but steady. "Any more shortness of breath when you lie flat?" she asked. "Breathing is easier sitting up," he said. "I tried to sleep and my chest told me no, so I stayed awake and counted the holes in that ceiling tile." He pointed to a square above him. The tile was speckled with small dots. "How many?" Emily asked. "Too many to waste on," he said. "You are checking my memory now, not my lungs." "You are doing fine on both," she said, wrapping the blood pressure cuff around his arm. The cuff hissed as it inflated. Walter stayed silent, watching her. When the cuff deflated and the machine beeped, she noted the numbers, then reached for his wrist to feel his pulse. His skin was thin under her fingers, warm and dry. Beneath it, the rhythm of his heart tapped steady and insistent. As she counted, his gaze drifted from her face to her hands. "You have steady hands," he said. "Not many new ones do." "I have been at this a while," she said. "Here?" he asked. "In hospitals," she said. "In uniforms," he said. She looked up. His eyes were on the faint white line that crossed her left wrist. A narrow scar, no longer tender, old enough to have faded from most people's notice. "Most nurses do not stand like that," he said. "Feet apart, weight balanced, like you are waiting for something loud to happen." Emily loosened her grip gently and placed his hand back on the blanket. "Have you had any pain this morning?" she asked. He let the change of subject sit for a beat. "I have had plenty," he said. "Chest feels like it is full of barbed wire. Knees hurt when the weather changes. This thing up my nose itches like hell." "None of that is what I was asking." Emily adjusted the flow on his oxygen slightly. The machine hissed a little louder. "You have a military history in your chart," she said. "Army correct." "Vietnam," he said. "Infantry, long time ago." "Some things do not leave your eyes even when your hands shake." He reached up and pinched the oxygen tubing lightly. "I know a combat medic when I see one," he said. "You move like someone who has stepped over sandbags." The room seemed to shrink a little. The jazz on the radio faded to the edge of hearing. For a second, in the gap between one breath and the next, the image of a different kind of corridor flickered at the back of Emily's mind. Dirt walls, sandbags, a narrow path with no polished floor, only trampled ground, voices shouting medic over the sound of something that was not a dropped bedpan or a slammed door. She let the image pass and focused on the man in front of her. "I went where I was sent," she said, "like you did." His eyes softened a fraction. "The Corps or the Army?" he asked. She considered him. Then she gave him the truth in a piece small enough to hold. "Marine Corps," she said, "medical side." He smiled just with one corner of his mouth. "Thought so," he said. "You people never quite stop standing at attention even when you pretend you have stopped." "I have not pretended," she said. "This is my job now." He nodded as if that made sense to him. "You like it here?" he asked. "It is my first week," she said. "I'm still finding the supply closets." "I have been here 4 days," he said. "I already know where they hide the good blankets and which aide sneaks the real sugar packets. You will catch up." She checked his lungs, pressing the diaphragm of her stethoscope against his back, asking him to take deep breaths. The sound in his lower lobes crackled, but there was a looseness to it that told her the antibiotics had started to work. Less cement, more mud. "Keep using that incentive spirometer," she said, nodding toward the plastic device on his tray table. "I know," he said. "Breathe in, make the little blue thing jump. I will do my tricks if you do yours." "What are my she asked. "Do not look away when he walks on the floor," Walter said quietly. Her hand paused for a fraction of a second on the stethoscope. It was so small a pause that anyone else might have missed it. Who, she asked. The man in the suit, he said. He came in last night, thought I was asleep. Stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at my chart, like it personally offended him that I needed oxygen and not a spreadsheet. Did he speak to you? Emily asked. Walter shook his head. He spoke at the nurse, he said. Asked why my meds were late when they were not late. She showed him the time. He smiled with only his mouth and told her to be more efficient. Did he touch you? She asked. You think he would risk that with a veteran with a cane within reach? Walter said. I may be old, but I still have elbows. She pictured Victor at the bedside. Hands in his pockets, then not. Folded, then not. The tilt of his head when he looked at a chart. The slight flare of his nostrils when something did not match the schedule in his mind. Walter watched her face. He has the same eyes I have seen on other men, he said. Men who liked being saluted a little too much. Men who thought rank meant they could do anything they pleased. Emily moved the stethoscope, listening to his upper lobes. The air moved more freely there. Thank you for telling me, she said. I'm not telling you to scare you, Walter said. You do not look scarable. I'm telling you so. You know what you're standing in. I know, she said. He studied her for another moment, then settled back against his pillows. Bring me the real coffee if my daughter sneaks it in again, he said. The hospital stuff tastes like someone boiled a bandage in it. I will see what I can do, she said. She left his room and wrote her notes at the bedside computer. Her handwriting on the paper flow sheet was neat, almost too neat for the rush of the unit. When she finished, she stepped back into the hall. At the nurse's station, Patty was hanging up a phone. Wound care is delayed, she said to Kelly. They got pulled to ICU again. She saw Emily and tilted her head. How is a 410, she asked. Walter giving you the interrogation yet? He is charming, Emily said, in a very direct way. Veteran Patty said, he has opinions about everything. He called the last CEO a blowhard when he saw him on TV in his room. I nearly choked. Emily did not reply to that. She scanned the board instead, checking for new orders. As she did, a rounding team came into view at the far end of the hall. A cluster of coats and clipboards, a tall attending physician, a couple of residents, and behind them not quite part of the group, but close enough to be the center of it, Victor. He moved differently with doctors than with nurses. Less overt challenge, more performance. He asked about bed turnover and length of stay, his questions wrapped in compliments. You are doing great work, he told the attending. If we can shave half a day off average admission, we will be a benchmark for the region. He smiled at the resident who had stayed all night. Get some sleep at some point, he said, but not yet. Emily stood at the supply cart, restocking flushes, her eyes on the labels, and her attention on the man at the end of the hall. She watched how he leaned in close when a nurse spoke enough to make most people step back. She watched which staff held their shoulders stiff when he passed, and which ones seemed to collapse in on themselves. He did not look at her this time. He was too busy talking, gesturing with his hands, fingers moving in precise, sharp cuts through the air. She slid a final saline flush into the cart bin and closed the drawer with a soft click. The sound disappeared into the background, another small noise in a place full of sounds that meant far more than anyone wrote in the chart. Friday slid toward evening with the slow tilt that made time feel heavier. By 4:30, the colors through the lobby glass had shifted. The hard blue sky over Denver was softening, the light coming in at an angle that painted the floor in long rectangles. People coming in for visits carried jackets over their arms now instead of draped on chairs. On 4 North, Lauren stood at the nurse's station with a phone cradled between her ear and shoulder pen, tapping the assignment sheet. I know you are down 2 in the ER, she said. I can float 1 for the first half of the night. That is all I have. She listened, sighed once, then hung up and scanned the board. Emily, she called. How are you with chaos? Emily looked up from her charting. I can manage. ER needs a body until 11, Lauren said. You will hand off your patients to Kelly. Take your brain sheet with you. Make sure everything is tight before you go. They know you are coming. Got it, Emily said. She rounded on her 3 rooms, checked lines, updated families. Walter smirked when she told him she was being borrowed. Ride the wave, he said. Watch for who runs toward the shouting and who runs from it. I will bring you contraband coffee if I see your daughter, she said. You will be a saint, he said. 50% of sainthood is coffee access. She squeezed his shoulder lightly and left. The elevator ride down to the emergency department rattled a little as if the cables had not been oiled in a while. The lower floors felt different in the way a basement feels different from a rooftop, even when the paint is the same. The ER entrance smelled like everything at once. Antiseptic and sweat, metal and plastic, the faint tang of blood that the cleaning agents never fully erased. Monitors beeped in overlapping rhythms. Voices echoed off hard surfaces. A stretcher rolled by as Emily stepped off the elevator, the patient's hand clutching a paper emesis bag. The charge nurse at the central desk looked up. Her badge read Rachel RN, and the circles under her eyes suggested she had been here longer than her shift officially claimed. "You are the float from 4 North," Rachel said. "Yes," Emily said. "Emily Cross. We are holding admitted patients in 3 bays until beds open." Rachel said, voice clipped efficient. "We have 1 trauma in CT and another ambulance 10 minutes out. You are on the stroke that came in 20 minutes ago." Bed 7, the doc is Patel. He likes concise reports. She slid a folded sheet toward Emily. "Vitals are on there," Rachel said. "CT is backed up. They know. Family is in the waiting room. The patient is scared. Try to keep her from climbing off the bed." "Understood," Emily said. She pushed through the double doors into the main pod. Gurneys lined the walls, some occupied, some waiting. The curtains at each bay opening moved slightly with the air currents, a ragged row of blue and green. Bed 7 was halfway down. The curtain was half drawn, leaving a clear view of an older woman on the stretcher. She was small, her white hair flattened on one side from the ambulance ride, her hospital gown hanging loosely over narrow shoulders. The left corner of her mouth drooped. Her left arm lay slack at her side. "Mrs. Fletcher," Emily said quietly as she stepped in. "I am Emily. I will be your nurse for a while." The woman's right hand twitched toward her. "My words feel wrong," she said. The syllables came out thick, slurred, fighting their way around the weakness in her face. "I know," Emily said. "That is why you are here. We are going to take care of you." She checked the monitor. Blood pressure elevated, heart rate up, oxygen saturation adequate with a small nasal cannula in place. The NIH stroke scale was already partially filled, the handwriting quick but legible. Dr. Noah Patel stood at the foot of the bed, flipping through her chart. He was in his 40s, dark hair pushed back from his forehead, stethoscope looped around his neck in a way that suggested he actually used it. "Emily," he said without looking up, "new on my team tonight?" "Yes," she said, cross med-circ float. "Good," he said. "We need someone who can hang a drip and not panic." He looked at Mrs. Fletcher again. "CT is still tied up," he said. "Trauma from I-70. They are stabilizing. We are next in line. Labs are drawn. She got aspirin from EMS. We keep her calm and monitor. If her neurostatus changes, I need to know before the monitor does." "Yes, Doctor," Emily said. He stepped closer to the bed. "Mrs. Fletcher," he said. "My name is Dr. Patel. You are in the emergency department because we are worried you might be having a stroke. The scanner we need to look at your brain is busy right now with someone who was in a car crash. You are next. We are watching you closely." Dorothy Fletcher's eyes tracked his face. Her right hand clenched the edge of the sheet. "Will I die?" she asked. The words were misshapen but clear enough. "Not tonight if I can help it," he said, tone even. "Right now your speech has changed, but your breathing is okay, your heart is working, and you are awake. Those are things I like." He nodded to Emily. "Talk to her," he said. "Keep the room quiet." He moved away to another bay, already flipping to the next chart. Emily adjusted the pillow behind Dorothy's head, raising the head of the bed another 10 degrees. "Your name is Dorothy, correct?" she said. The woman nodded slowly. "Dorothy. I need you to do a few things for me," Emily said. "Can you squeeze my fingers with your right hand?" The grip was surprisingly strong. Emily smiled. "Good," she said. "Now with your left." The left hand barely moved. The effort showed on Dorothy's face in a slight furrow of her brow. "That is okay," Emily said. "We will keep checking." She continued through the assessment. Smile, show teeth, lifting arms, following simple commands. The pattern was familiar. The details were individual. Outside the curtain, the ER moved in its usual uneven rhythm. A child cried somewhere high and sharp. An overhead voice called for respiratory to trauma 1. A gurney wheel squeaked with every rotation. Dorothy's eyes darted toward the opening in the curtain, toward every sound. "Too loud," she whispered. Emily stepped between the bed and the opening, her body blocking most of the visible hallway. "I am here," she said. "You can look at me. You do not have to watch the whole circus." Dorothy focused on her instead. "You have kids?" Dorothy asked suddenly. The words came slow, but the curiosity underneath them was clear. "I do not," Emily said. "Husband?" Dorothy asked. "No," Emily said. "Just me." "Just you," Dorothy repeated. "Strong." She seemed to consider that for a moment, then her gaze drifted to Emily's badge. "My husband is on the board," she said. "He likes this place, gave money for the fancy lights." Emily looked up briefly at the overhead fixtures. They were indeed fancier than most long panels that mimicked daylight instead of harsh circles. "He must care about good care," Emily said. "He cares about his name on the wall," Dorothy said, a trace of old humor in the tilt of her mouth that was not affected by the stroke. Emily let out a small breath that might have been a laugh. "He cares about you too," she said, "which is why there are probably 6 messages on someone's phone upstairs right now." Dorothy's right hand tightened slightly on the sheet. "He will be angry," she said. "With me?" Emily asked. With everyone, Dorothy said. He does not like delays. He does not like when things do not go like the agenda. Tonight the agenda is your brain and your heart, Emily said. We will explain the rest. She kept her voice low, steady as she checked the IV site and reset the blood pressure alarm parameters to avoid unnecessary beeping. The machine still chirped occasionally, a small insistent sound against the backdrop of louder noises. Upstairs on the executive floor the lights were different, warmer, softer. The carpet underfoot made footsteps nearly soundless. Victor sat at his desk, jacket off-tie, loosened one notch. A spreadsheet glowed on his monitor. Surgical volumes for the quarter projected against last year. A column of red numbers irritated him. He traced one line with his finger, following it to a note about delayed discharges due to placement issues. Excuses, he muttered. His phone buzzed against the desk. He glanced down. The screen showed the name Thomas Fletcher. He answered on the second ring. Tom, he said, I was just looking at our numbers. Your cardiology suggestion is paying off. My wife is in your emergency room, Thomas said, skipping greeting. His voice was tight. Dorothy, she was brought in 20 minutes ago. Possible stroke. No one has called me. No one has called our daughter. Her phone went to voicemail. What is happening down there? Victor sat up straighter. I did not know, he said. I will find out immediately. I want her scanned, Thomas said. Now, not in an hour, not when it is convenient. Of course, Victor said. We take strokes very seriously. I'm sure they are following protocol. Then why has no one called? Thomas snapped. She is scared. She hates hospitals. You told us this place was different. Victor's jaw tightened. Heat rose under his collar. I will go down myself, he said. I will make sure she gets what she needs. You do that, Thomas said. And call me, personally, not some resident. The line went dead. Victor stared at the dark screen for half a second, then set the phone down more forcefully than necessary. The corner of a file shifted under the impact pages, sliding askew. He stood, pulled his jacket on, and straightened his tie fully this time. The tie felt like armor. He checked his reflection in the dark window. The city lights behind him made his face look like it floated in the glass. He pressed the intercom. Sharon, he said, hold my calls. I'm going to the ER. Yes, Mr. Harlan, his assistant's voice replied. He took the private elevator, the one that required a key. The ride down slipped by without the small jolts of the staff elevators. The doors opened to a corridor that connected to the main ER entrance. Here the smell changed. Less coffee, more antiseptic, less carpet, more tile. As he walked, people noticed. A transporter with an empty wheelchair stepped aside, pressing his back briefly to the wall. A clerk from registration flattened a stack of forms nervously on her clipboard. Victor's steps were precise, each one placed without hesitation. His hand brushed the fronts of his jacket to smooth the fabric. At the nurse's desk, Rachel looked up and then quickly down again. Mr. Harlan, she said, we were not expecting you. My board member's wife is lying in one of your beds, Victor said, and she has not had a scan. Where is she? Bed 7. Rachel said, voice careful. CT is occupied with an unstable trauma. Dr. Patel has her prioritized as next. I did not ask what the excuse was, Victor said. I asked where she is. Rachel swallowed. Hall B to your left, she said. He turned without another word and walked down the hall. Emily heard his voice before she saw him. It came from the central desk, clipped and sharp, cutting through the layered sounds of the unit. It moved closer, each syllable precise, the cadence of someone used to being listened to. Dorothy's eyes widened. Her fingers dug into the sheet. He is here, she whispered. The droop in her face could not hide the sudden tension. Emily glanced toward the curtain opening. She stepped to the side, placing herself more squarely between Dorothy and the doorway. One hand rested lightly on the bed rail. You are with me, she said. Breathe in slowly, out slowly. The doctor knows the plan. CT is not a store shelf. We cannot pull another scanner out of the back. Dorothy huffed something like a laugh, but her eyes stayed fixed on the curtain. Outside, Victor's shoes clicked against the tile, coming closer. Conversations in the hall thinned, then quieted. A tech who had been charting stepped back against a wall tablet, hugged to his chest. The curtain at bed 7 stirred faintly as someone's shadow fell across it. Victor pulled the curtain aside without waiting for anyone to do it for him. The fluorescent light from the hallway spilled into bed 7, sharp and white. His shadow cut across Dorothy Fletcher's blankets and over the side of Emily's scrub top. Dorothy flinched, her right hand jerked, fingers clawing at the sheet. Dorothy, Victor said. It is Victor. I came as soon as I heard. He sounded smooth. Concern threaded his words in a neat pattern. From 3 steps away, it would have sounded caring. Up close, Emily saw his jaw clenched under the tie. The muscles at his temples moved as if they were chewing on something hard. Dorothy tried to answer. The left side of her face sagged. The words came broken. Too long, she managed. Wait. Victor's eyes snapped to Emily. Why has she not been scanned, he asked. His voice was not loud yet. It did not need to be. The force of it was in the way it carved through the room and left no space around the question. Emily met his gaze. His eyes were a light color that might have looked kind in another context. Here they were cold and bright. The CT scanner is in use with an unstable trauma from the highway, she said. Dr. Patel has Mrs. Fletcher next in line. We are monitoring her closely. That is not what I asked, he said. I asked why she is still here. Emily could feel Dorothy's breath against her arm. Shallow, quickening. The monitor above the bed ticked the heart rate up by 2 beats. She is still here because moving a trauma out mid-scan to bring her in would be unsafe for both patients, Emily said. The delay is medical, not neglect. Victor took a step closer. The smell of his cologne pushed against the smell of antiseptic and plastic. Do you know who she is? He asked. I know she is a 70-year-old woman with acute neurologic changes, Emily said. I know she's frightened and listening to every word. Dorothy's eyes flicked between them. Emily could feel the tremor in the hand that clutched the sheet. I am not asking for a lecture on her fear, Victor said. I am asking for action. You could have pushed. You could have demanded. That is what a competent nurse does. Emily kept her tone even. I am communicating with the physician, she said. He is prioritizing based on acuity. That is how emergency medicine works. You are going to quote protocol at me, Victor said, in a hallway where my board member's wife is lying half paralyzed. We are not in a hallway, Emily said. We are in a patient room, and she can hear you. There was a beat, then a narrow space where he could have stepped back. His gaze flicked to Dorothy's face, then back to Emily. His shoulders rose with his breath, but did not drop again. Rachel appeared at the edge of the curtain, stopping just short of the opening. Mr. Harlan, she said, if you would like, I can get Dr. Patel to explain the situation. I do not need a doctor to explain time to me, he said without looking at her. I can see a clock. He leaned in, crowding the space between the bed and Emily. What I see, he said, is a nurse who has decided that telling me stories is easier than fixing a problem. Dorothy's right hand twitched, reaching toward Emily, then withdrawing unsure. Emily did not back up. She did not move forward either. She stayed exactly where she was, body in a straight line between Dorothy and the man in the suit. What your wife needs right now is a calm environment, Emily said. Raising your voice will not speed the CT scanner. It will raise her blood pressure. Victor's lips curled. Do you have any idea who you are talking to? He asked. Yes, she said, a man in a hospital room. The words hung there bare. Rachel's hand tightened on the curtain edge. A tech passing behind her slowed, then stopped entirely, a portable monitor in his grip. At the central desk, a unit secretary raised her head listening. Victor's face flushed color rising from his collar. Get out of my way, he said. No, Emily said. She did not raise her voice. The single syllable was quiet enough that someone 3 beds down would not have heard it. Victor stepped closer until there were only inches between them. Emily could see the faint shine of sweat at his hairline. His hand flexed once at his side. You are done here, he said. You think you can talk back to me in my hospital in front of my board member's wife. I will see to it that you never work in this city again. You will be lucky if you keep your license long enough to fold towels in a clinic. Dorothy's pulse ticked up another 3 beats. The monitor chirped a warning. A small alarm began to sound, more insistent than before. Emily reached to silence it, fingers quick and sure on the buttons. Her other hand stayed near the bed rail. We can discuss my employment later, she said. Right now I am taking care of a stroke patient. You are hiding behind her, Victor said. You are using her as a shield for your incompetence. Dorothy's voice came out thin and strained. Please, she whispered. Too loud. Emily's jaw tightened. She looked at Dorothy, then back at Victor. Lower your voice, she said, or step outside. His eyes hardened. You do not tell me where to stand, he said. He moved. Rachel saw at first the shift in his shoulders, the way his weight rolled onto the balls of his feet. Her breath caught. Victor's right arm came up fast, elbow bent, hand open. The motion was smooth, almost practiced, as if his muscles remembered the sequence without his mind needing to guide it. Dorothy's eyes went wide. Her right hand flew up halfway too slow to reach anyone. The room narrowed. The sounds in the hallway slipped away. The monitor's beeping dropped to the edge of awareness. Emily saw the arc of his hand, the angle of his wrist, the line his arm would follow. She had seen arms move like that before in rooms very different from this one, in air that smelled of dust and cordite instead of antiseptic. Her body moved before thought caught up. Her left hand came up and caught his wrist in midair. Not a grab, not a yank, a precise catch her thumb on the tendon fingers wrapping bone. The impact never reached her face. The force of his motion traveled into her hand instead. She stepped in, not back. Her right hand slid under his elbow fingers, finding the notch of the joint. Her feet shifted on the tile, one sliding behind his, her weight dropping through her hips. Stop, she said. Her voice was low, calm. It carried no strain. The whole exchange, from the rise of his hand to the contact of her fingers, took less time than a single breath. Victor's body fought the new direction. His momentum kept going even as his arm was redirected. His center of gravity tipped forward over the line of his feet. Emily turned her torso, guiding his arm past her, angling his wrist down and his elbow up. The movement was smooth, almost gentle, except for the inevitability of it. His knees hit the tile with a dull sound that cut through the thin curtain and into the hall. The monitor above Dorothy's bed beeped once in a higher register, reacting to the sudden dip in the sensor cord as Emily shifted. Victor stared at the floor for a heartbeat as if it had appeared there without warning. His mouth opened-closed. His breath came out in a sharp sound that was too raw to be anger. Emily kept his arm controlled, her left hand on his wrist, her right hand at his elbow, not forcing the joint beyond its natural range, but holding it on the edge where any struggle would mean his own body did the damage. "Do not move," she said. He tried anyway. "Let go of me," he said. His voice cracked around the words. He tried to twist to pull his arm free. Pain flickered across his face as his own movement pushed his joint into the pressure she had set. "Stop," Emily said again. "You are going to hurt yourself." Her legs were bent, her weight balanced. If he pushed harder, she could have increased the angle and he would have felt something tear. She did not. She held him where he was. Dorothy stared, lips parted. Her right hand had frozen halfway toward Emily and stayed there, fingers curled. At the edge of the curtain, Rachel stood with her mouth slightly open, eyes wide. Behind her, the tech clutched his monitor cable so tightly his knuckles had gone white. A resident walking down the hall stumbled to a stop. A respiratory therapist with a portable oxygen tank halted mid-step, their eyes fixed on the scene inside bed 7. Victor's breath came faster now, not from exertion, but from something else. His free hand pressed against the floor, palm flat on the tile. "Let me up," he said. The sound of his voice was different. Some command still coiled in it, but it was wrapped around something thinner. "Please," he added. The second word came out almost as a whisper. Emily held him 1 second longer. 2. Long enough that he understood that he was not getting up under his own power, that his movement depended on hers. Then she eased his wrist, lowered his elbow, and stepped back, letting his arm go. She straightened slowly, her hands fell back to her sides. Victor stayed on his knees for a breath, then pushed himself upright in a clumsy motion that wrinkled his perfect suit. He got one foot under him, then the other standing with a small wobble that he tried to cover with a hand smoothing his jacket. His face was flushed a deep red. A vein stood out at his temple. His eyes flicked around the bay, taking in the watching faces. The room was silent except for the machines. The overhead announcements had stopped for that single moment, or maybe no one heard them. Emily stepped back to the bedside. Her hand found the bed rail again, fingers curling lightly around it. Her breathing was steady. A small strand of hair had come loose near her temple. She reached up and tucked it behind her ear. Dorothy's monitor showed her heart rate elevated but stable. Her chest rose and fell faster than before, but her gaze had sharpened, pulled away from the fear of the stroke and locked onto something else. Rachel found her voice first. "Is everyone all right?" she asked. It came out thin. Victor turned on her. "Call security," he said. "Now." Rachel blinked. "Sir," she began. "She attacked me," he said. "In my own hospital, in front of a patient." He pointed at Emily, his finger shaking. "I want her removed," he said. "I want her license number. I want the police, right now." His words came in short, jagged bursts. The smooth concern from a minute ago was gone. His cologne hung in the air over the sharper smell of adrenaline and fear. Emily did not answer. She checked the IV site, adjusted the oxygen tubing slightly, and spoke to Dorothy instead. "Your heart rate is up," she said softly. "That is to be expected. Try to breathe with me." She inhaled slowly, counted to 4, exhaled to 6. Dorothy tried to match her. The line on the monitor began to fall by single beats. At the curtain, Rachel's hand hovered over the phone at her hip. Her eyes darted between Victor and Emily and Dorothy. "Call security," Victor repeated. "If you do not, I will have your job as well." Rachel pressed the button. Her voice trembled when she spoke into the receiver. "This is ER charge," she said. "We need security to bed 7. Physical altercation involving administration." The words hung in the air, strange and heavy. No one in the hall had heard them put together in that order before. Emily finished checking Dorothy's vital signs, then stepped back from the bed. She did not move closer to Victor. She did not move away. He straightened his tie, again motions jerky now. He smoothed the front of his jacket, fingers brushing at an imaginary speck of dust. When he spoke, his voice had recovered some of its earlier polish. "You are fired," he told Emily. "You will be escorted out as soon as security arrives. You will never work here again. You will never work anywhere that matters again." Emily looked at him, then at Dorothy. "I hear you," she said calmly. She did not add anything else. In the hallway, footsteps approached heavier than the usual staff shoes. The sound of radios crackled softly. The curtain at bed 7 moved as 2 security officers stepped into view. The security officers stepped through the curtain, one after the other, filling the narrow space with Navy uniforms and quiet authority. Both wore hospital badges clipped next to their radios. One was broad across the shoulders, mid-40s hair, starting to gray at the temples. The other was younger, slimmer eyes moving quickly as he took in the room. They saw Victor first. His tie was crooked now. His suit pants had a faint crease at one knee where the fabric had wrinkled. His breathing was still too fast for a man who claimed to be in control. "She assaulted me," he said, pointing at Emily. "I want her removed, and I want the police notified. Immediately." The older officer glanced at Emily, then at Dorothy on the bed, then at Rachel still posted at the curtain like a sentry who had misplaced her orders. "Sir," the officer said, "we are going to need to hear what happened from everyone." Victor's gaze sharpened. "I am the chief executive officer of this hospital," he said. "What happened is that an unstable nurse attacked me without provocation when I came to check on a patient." "Sir, I understand your position," the officer said. "I still need to ask questions." The younger officer spoke up, his voice more tentative. "Is anyone injured?" he asked. "Do we need medical attention besides the patient?" Dorothy let out a small sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob at the same time. "I am the one with the stroke," she said thickly. "He is the one who fell." Her tongue stumbled over the words, but the meaning came through. Victor's head snapped toward her. "Dorothy, you are confused," he said quickly. "You saw her grab me." Dorothy blinked as if trying to focus both her eyes and her memory. "She grabbed your arm," she said, "when it was here." Her right hand lifted slowly, mimicking his earlier motion, palm open midair. Emily's jaw muscle jumped once. She swallowed it back down. Rachel took a breath like someone stepping into cold water. "Officer," she said. Mr. Harlan came into the bay and raised his voice. The patient's blood pressure climbed. The nurse asked him to step outside. He refused. Victor turned on her. "Are you questioning my account, Rachel?" he said. There was an edge in the way he used her name, as if he owned it. Rachel's fingers curled tighter around the phone at her hip. "I am answering the question you were asked," she said. Her voice shook on the last word, but she did not take it back. The resident who had stopped in the hall stepped closer, now stethoscope bouncing against his chest with the movement. "I saw him move toward her, with his hand raised," the resident said. "She blocked him, redirected, took him to the ground. The whole thing was controlled. She did not hit him." "She knocked me down," Victor said. "That is assault." "She prevented you from hitting someone," a new voice said. Dr. Noah Patel appeared at the curtain, dark hair, slightly mussed eyes taking in the scene in a practiced scan. He had a chart in one hand, pen in the other, but his attention was on the people, not the paper. "I heard the call for security," he said. "Bed 7 physical altercation. I thought we had a combative patient. I did not realize it was a combative executive." The younger officer's mouth twitched, then flattened again. Patel stepped to the foot of the bed and checked Dorothy's monitor, almost without looking at it. "Her numbers are climbing," he said quietly. "We need to settle this down or take it outside." The older officer nodded. "My name is Officer Green," he said. "This is Officer Collins. We are going to separate everyone for statements. Mr. Harlan, we can step out into the hallway to talk." "I'm not going anywhere until she is removed," Victor said, jabbing his finger at Emily again. He did not seem to notice that his hand trembled slightly with the motion. Patel's gaze slid to Emily. "Emily," he said, using her name, grounding it. "Are you injured?" "No," she said. "Did you strike Mr. Harlan?" Green asked. "No," she said again. "I stopped him from striking me." "She is lying," Victor snapped. "I raised my hand to gesture and she attacked me. She has combat training clearly. You saw what she did." Green's eyes sharpened at that. "Combat training," he repeated. Before Victor could spin that into something worse, another figure appeared in the hallway. Patty. She had been bringing a patient down from 4 North, a post-op hip, who had just been handed over to a stretcher tech. She had turned to go back to the elevator when she heard the overhead call for security and the words involving administration. Curiosity, and something older than curiosity, had pulled her toward bed 7. Now she stood just outside the curtain, her hand clenched around the strap of her badge reel. "Officer," she said, her voice emerging before she realized she was speaking. "I saw what happened." Green turned slightly. "Ma'am, your name?" "Patricia Lopez," she said. "RN 4 North. I was at the desk. He walked past us. We heard his voice in here. It got louder. We heard the patient's monitor. We came closer." Her gaze flicked to Victor, then to Emily, then back to Green. Years of keeping her head down pressed on her shoulders. Years of watching, staying silent, swallowing words. Her heart pounded. It made her feel slightly lightheaded, like she might step out of her own body and float away if she did not hold on to something. She held on to the truth instead. "He raised his hand," she said. "He was going to slap her. I've seen that motion before." The last sentence came out quieter than the rest. Emily looked at her. The look was brief, but there was recognition in it. Victor laughed, once a short sound with no humor in it. "She is one of my employees," he said. "She's covering for her friend." Patty's eyes flashed. "Sir, I have worked here 8 years," she said. I have covered a lot of things, not this. Her voice steadied on the last two words. Green nodded slowly. All right, he said. We will get detailed statements. For now, everyone needs to calm down. Mr. Harlan, if you are not physically injured, I recommend you step out while we ensure the patient is stable. I am not leaving, Victor said. This is my emergency department. No, Patel said, his own voice still calm. This is my emergency department. You are a visitor here at the moment, and you are making my patient worse. The words landed like a small stone tossed into a still pond. The ripples went out through the staff at the door, the tech, the resident Rachel. Green looked from Victor to Patel. Doctor, he said, for the sake of the patient, do we need to clear the room? Yes, Patel said, we do. Before Victor could argue again, another presence arrived, one that matched his rank, if not his title. A woman in a navy blazer and flats stepped into view. Her badge clipped at her waist read, Elise Garner, Risk Management. She had iron gray hair cut close to her head, and the expression of someone who had spent most of her career listening to people describe the worst 10 minutes of their lives. I heard we have a situation, she said. Her eyes went straight to Dorothy first. She took in the droop on one side of the woman's face, the tremor in her hand, the heart rate on the monitor. Then she looked at Victor's flushed cheeks, Emily's steady posture, the way everyone else was holding themselves. Mr. Harlan, she said, why do we have security in a stroke bay? Because your nurse attacked me, he said. I expect you to treat this with the seriousness it deserves. I intend to, Elise said, which is why we are going to stop shouting in front of a vulnerable patient and move this conversation somewhere else. She lays a hand on me, and you are worried about her tone, Victor said. Elise held up a hand, palm out, not toward Emily, but toward him. Mr. Harlan, she said, step outside with me, please. Officers, you can accompany us. Dr. Patel, continue caring for the patient. Ms. Cross, do not leave the department until I speak with you. Her voice was level, light enough that it did not seem like a command until one noticed that everyone obeyed it. Victor opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it. He looked around the bay and saw nothing he could use. No nods, no eager accomplices, only faces watching him, some openly, some from behind the flimsy shield of blue curtains. Fine, he said, but this is not over. He stepped back, almost tripping over the threshold as his foot caught the edge of a rolling stool. He steadied himself with a hand on the wall, then straightened and walked out between the two officers and Elise. The curtain fell mostly closed behind them. The air in bed 7 seemed to expand again as if someone had opened a window that had been sealed shut. Patel moved closer to Dorothy's bedside, his focus immediately narrowing to her. Mrs. Fletcher, he said, let us check that smile again. She tried the right side, lifting the left lagging, but the effort came with more strength than before. You all right? He asked. I have had worse evenings, she said, her words thick but dry. He is the one who hit the floor. Patel's mouth twitched. Fair enough, he said. Emily checked the monitor again, watched the heart rate slowly settle back toward baseline. She adjusted the blood pressure cuff. Her hands did not shake. At the edge of the curtain, Patty exhaled so hard her shoulders dropped. Oh my God, she said under her breath. Rachel stepped into the bay fully now. Are you okay? She asked Emily. He did not hurt you. No, Emily said. He did not have the chance. Patty looked at her eyes still wide. What did you do? She asked. That was not a self-defense class at the Y. Emily considered the question. I redirected his momentum, she said. I did not strike him. That is not what I meant, and you know it, Patty said softly. Emily did not respond. Patel glanced between them, filed it away for later. Everyone back to work, he said. We keep the circus outside the curtains, not inside. Miss Cross, stay close. Ms. Lopez, thank you. Patty nodded and stepped back. Her legs felt oddly light, but there was a coil of something solid in her chest that had not been there before. In a small conference room off the ER a short time later, Elise sat at a table with a legal pad and a recorder. The room smelled of dry erase markers and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A framed photograph of the Rockies hung crooked on one wall. Emily sat opposite her, hands folded on the table. Officer Green leaned against the wall, arms crossed, expression neutral. I'm going to ask you to walk me through what happened from the moment Mr. Harlan arrived at bed 7, Elise said. Take your time. If I interrupt, it is only to clarify details. Emily nodded. Her voice when she began was the same voice she used to give report at shift change. Calm, organized, precise. She described Dorothy's arrival, the CT delay, the conversation with Dr. Patel. She recounted Victor's entrance, his questions, his volume, Dorothy's rising anxiety. She repeated her own words as close as she could remember them. She described the position of the bed, the layout of the room, the placement of Rachel and the tech at the curtain. When did you believe he was about to strike you? Elise asked. When his hand moved past his center line with enough force that stopping halfway would have required active braking, Emily said. Elise's pen paused on the page. Explain that, she said. Emily lifted her hand partway, demonstrating the arc. If you mean to gesture, she said, you usually stop here. Shoulder, maybe mid-chest. His hand passed that palm-open angle toward my face. His body weight shifted forward. I have seen that motion many times. It was not an accident. Her eyes flicked up to meet Elise's for a moment, then dropped back to the table. What training do you have in defensive tactics? Elise asked. Military, Emily said, and some hospital-based de-escalation. Can you be more specific about the military part? Elise said. If it is relevant to your investigation, Emily said you have it in my employee file. Elise watched her for a second, something like curiosity crossing her face. We will review your file, she said. For now, anything else I need to know about that moment? Yes, Emily said. I was also standing between him and a patient with an acute neurologic deficit. I was not going to step aside. You could have backed up and let him in, Elise said. I could have, Emily said. I did not. That was a choice. Green shifted against the wall, the movement small but noticeable. Elise nodded. All right, she said. Thank you. We will also be interviewing Mr. Harlan, Ms. Lopez, Ms. Davis, Dr. Patel, and any other staff in the area. Do you need me to leave the department? Emily asked. Elise tapped the pen against her notepad once. Not yet, she said. You may continue your shift. Do not discuss this with Mr. Harlan or anyone outside. Those directly involved. I know the staff will talk. That is not the same as an official statement. Emily nodded. Understood, she said. She stood chair legs squeaking on the tile and left the room. When the door closed, Green let out a low whistle. She did not even raise her voice, he said. She did not have to, Elise said. She flipped open the folder she had brought with her, the one that had been waiting in the HR tray that morning. Cross Emily Ann. Her onboarding packet sat neatly stacked. Application references, license verification, a background check, and flagged near the back a copy of her DD 214. Elise slid that page free. The paper listed 8 years of service. United States Marine Corps. Military occupational specialty codes that Elise did not recognize at first glance, but the descriptions underneath were clear enough. Field medical service, deployment assignments, instructor qualifications in close quarters defense, awards and commendations tucked along the bottom, a small forest of ribbons rendered in words. Green leaned over. She was a Marine, he said. Yes, Elise said. A very good one, apparently. She closed the folder slowly. What the hell is she doing here? Green asked. Elise looked at the closed door where Emily had exited, then at the page in her hand. That, she said, is one of the questions I plan to ask her. After I finish dealing with the man who thinks no one can touch him. She slipped the file back into the folder, the paper whispering against the cardboard. Later, when the unit quieted for a moment and the trauma and CT had finally moved upstairs, an email went out from risk management to a long list of hospital addresses. Subject: internal review incident in emergency department. The text was short. It referenced an event involving a member of administration and clinical staff. It requested cooperation with interviews. It reminded everyone of their obligation to provide truthful information. On 4 North, Patty read it on a hallway computer and felt her heart pick up again. On the executive floor, Sharon at the front desk read it twice, then looked at the closed door of Victor's office. In the ER, Emily did not see the email yet. She was standing at Dorothy Fletcher's bedside, watching the little blue piston on the incentive spirometer climb 1 mark higher than it had that morning. The interview started on Monday. By 8 in the morning, a conference room on the administrative floor had been turned into a revolving door. A pitcher of water sweated on the sideboard. A stack of consent forms sat next to a small digital recorder. Someone had tried to soften the space with a bowl of mints. It did not help much. Patty stood outside the door, with her hands clasped thumbs, rubbing back and forth over a groove in her ID clip. The hallway carpet muffled footsteps. The walls here were painted a calmer shade than the ones on 4 North, an executive beige that did not exist anywhere patients could see. Mrs. Lopez, a voice called. Elise opened the conference room door and motioned her inside. Come in, she said. Thank you for making time. Patty stepped in. The room felt cooler than the hallway air conditioning, turned up a few degrees higher for people in suits. She sat where Elise indicated the chair too soft compared to the plastic break room seats she was used to. Elise clicked on the recorder, gave the standard date and time, and then looked at Patty with the same steady gaze she had used on Emily. I know you have been here a long time, Elise said. I appreciate your willingness to speak with me. Everything you tell me will be part of the official investigation. Patty swallowed. Her throat felt dry already. I have 8 years here, she said. I do not know if that qualifies as long or just stubborn. It means you have seen things newer staff have not, Elise said. I would like to hear about Friday night and then about anything else you think is relevant. Patty nodded. She started with bed 7. Victor's voice. The rise of Dorothy's monitor. Emily standing between them. The motion of his arm. The way Emily had moved quick and clean like she had been waiting for exactly that. Her voice shook at first, then steadied as the story turned from fear to action. He went down fast, Patty said. I have never seen anyone put him on the floor. I never thought it was possible that anyone would. Elise listened without interrupting, pen moving occasionally across her pad. And before Friday, she asked gently, "Have you ever seen Mr. Harlan lay hands on staff?" Patty's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "Yes," she said. The word came out almost soundless. She made herself repeat it. "Yes," she said again. "At least twice. For sure twice. Maybe more if you count grabbing arms." She described Jenna fresh out of school slapped outside a supply room 3 years ago, the sound echoing down the hall, the way Jenna had disappeared after signing papers in HR. "I did not say anything then," Patty said. "I told myself it would not matter. That HR would not believe me. That he would find a way to hurt me too. So I kept my mouth shut and watched her leave." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She blinked them back. "Why are you speaking now?" Elise asked. Patty thought of Emily's steady hands on Victor's arm, the controlled way she had put him on his knees. She thought of the look in Dorothy's eyes, not just fear, but something like disbelief that anyone would stand up to that man. "Because I watched a nurse twice, my courage stop him," Patty said. "And because I cannot look another new hire in the eye and pretend this place only has normal problems." Elise let the silence sit for a moment, then she nodded. "Thank you," she said. "This is the kind of detail we have never had in an official record." Patty left the room feeling wrung out and oddly light. As she walked back toward the elevator, she passed Sharon at the executive reception desk. Sharon gave her a small, quick nod, the kind that said she knew exactly why Patty had been in that conference room. By midday, the conference room had seen Rachel the tech from the hallway, the resident, the respiratory therapist, and Dr. Patel. Each filled in another piece. Patel was matter of fact. He was escalating, Patel said. The patient was showing physiological signs of distress. The nurse acted to protect herself and the patient. Her technique was controlled proportional, and she let him go as soon as he stopped resisting. Elise raised an eyebrow. "Proportional," she repeated. "Yes," Patel said. "If she wanted to hurt him, she could have. He is lucky she knows what she's doing." Later that afternoon, Elise turned to another list of former employees. HR had compiled names of nurses and techs who had left in the last 5 years, with notes in their files that said things like personal reasons or relocation, but whose exit interviews in the few cases where one had been completed had mentioned phrases such as difficult culture and concerns about leadership. They started with those who still lived in Denver. Some did not answer calls from a hospital number. A few did. One, a nurse named Erin, agreed to come in after her shift at a different facility. She sat in the same soft chair, her new hospital's badge clipped next to her old Silverline one on her lanyard. She had not cut the old one off. It dangled there, turned backward. "He slapped me in front of a patient," Erin said. "I had paged about a potassium level that was dropping fast. He thought I was overreacting, told me I was being dramatic. When I insisted, he walked into the room, told the patient everything was fine, then corrected my behavior right there." She tapped her own cheek where the palm print had bloomed that day. "I filed a complaint," she said. HR said there was not enough evidence. The patient was sedated. The aide who saw it suddenly could not remember how it happened. Next thing I know, I am getting written up for lateness I could prove was not mine. I left. I nearly left nursing." Her voice grew quieter on the last sentence. Elise listened, pen moving. "Would you be willing to provide a written statement?" she asked. Erin looked at her. "Is something finally happening?" she asked. "Yes," Elise said. Erin nodded once. "Then yes," she said. "I will write whatever you want." Some former staff were out of state. For them, Elise arranged video calls. The faces appeared in little boxes on the conference room screen, time zones showing in the slant of light across their features. A nurse in Texas, a respiratory therapist in Oregon, a charge nurse in Kansas who had relocated for family 6 months after a meeting in which she had raised concerns about staffing and found herself reassigned to nights permanently. The stories lined up more than they differed. Raised voices, public humiliation, sudden performance issues where none had existed before. One more story of a slap in a hallway. The pattern that had been scattered whispered denied now drew itself into a line on Elise's notepad. By the end of the week, it was clear this was not about one incident in bed 7. It was about 5 years of something that had grown in the dark because no one had pulled the curtain back far enough before. The hospital's legal department sat down with Elise to review her preliminary findings. The room smelled sharply of printer ink and the faint metallic tang of stress. "There is significant exposure here," one of the attorneys said, tapping a stack of printed emails. "If this goes outside the building, we are looking at hostile work environment claims at the very least. Possibly assault depending on how many of these past incidents we can corroborate." "It is already outside the building," Elise said. "Half the nursing community in Denver knows about this place. That is why HR has needed 3 recruiters to keep the floor staffed." "We have always settled complaints quietly," another attorney said. Non-disclosure agreement severance. The board has approved that strategy in the past. Elise looked at him. How many NDAs involving Mr. Harlan, she asked. The attorney flipped through a folder. 3 in the last 5 years, he said. Not all nurses. 1 was a coordinator in radiology. 3 that you know of, Elise said. That is different from 3 total. The attorney did not argue. On Thursday morning, a reporter from the local paper called the hospital's media line. Her name was Harper. She had been tipped off by an anonymous email that referenced a CEO, a nurse, and a floor that is finally talking. The official statement she received from public relations was bland. There had been an incident involving a member of hospital leadership and a staff member currently under review. Patient care had not been compromised. Harper dug anyway. She called nurses she knew socially. She scrolled through a private Facebook group where local healthcare workers vented anonymously. She found an old post from a travel nurse who had spent 6 weeks at Silverline and left with the line, "Never again. Leadership is a nightmare. Ask me about the slap." By Friday, a short article ran online. Local hospital CEO under internal review after reported altercation with nurse. The piece did not name Victor at first. It spoke of an unnamed executive, multiple sources, and allegations of a pattern of aggressive behavior. It mentioned high turnover rates at Silverline compared to similar hospitals in the region. In the staff lounge on 4 North, Kelly read it aloud from her phone, the words sounding strange and sharp in the small room. "They know," she said. "People outside know." Sam, stirring powdered creamer into her coffee, shook her head slowly. "Took long enough," she said. Patty sat with her back to the wall, her sandwich untouched on the table in front of her. "It feels like someone pointed a camera at a crime scene we have been walking through every day," she said. In his office, Victor read the same article on his monitor. The light from the screen made his face look drawn. He called Linda Cho, the board chair. "This is a hit piece," he said. "We need to issue a correction. These are rumors from disgruntled staff." "The article did not use your name," Linda said. "Only yours was the title that matches." "It might as well have," he snapped. "You know how this looks." "I know it looks like we have a public relations problem," Linda said, "and possibly a liability problem. You are going to let one nurse and a handful of malcontents undo 5 years of successful leadership," Victor demanded. "Victor," Linda said, her tone changing, "we are going to let a thorough investigation tell us what 5 years of your leadership has really cost." He opened his mouth, closed it. His eyes went to the window. From this height, the parking lot looked clean and orderly. Cars moved in neat lines. "For years you have praised my numbers," he said. "You sat in this office and told me I turned this place around. And for years we trusted that the complaints were isolated," Linda said. "I am no longer sure that trust was well placed." After she hung up, she sat in her own office with Elise's preliminary report spread out on her desk. The list of interviews, the timeline of incidents, the mention of prior issues at another facility where Victor had worked before Silverline. Her stomach turned slightly. She had signed off on his hiring. She had ignored unease twice when HR had brought her concerns without enough documentation to make it feel undeniable. The board convened an emergency meeting for the following week. The email sent to members used dry language review of leadership concerns, internal findings, legal implications. The undercurrent was not dry at all. On the day of the meeting, the largest conference room on the top floor, filled with board members, legal counsel, and a few invited witnesses. The walls were mostly glass, giving a view of downtown and the distant line of the mountains. The table was long polished, set with bottled water and notepads. Emily rode the elevator up from the 4th floor in a clean set of scrubs. She had finished a half shift and been told to report upstairs instead of clocking out. Her badge felt heavier than usual as it rested against her chest. She walked past Sharon, who gave her a small nod of encouragement, and stepped into the room when Elise opened the door for her. Conversations dipped for a moment as she entered. Some board members looked openly curious. Others looked down at their papers, then up at her, measuring. "Mrs. Cross," Linda said, "thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Emily sat at the end of the table opposite Linda and a few seats down from where Victor would usually sit. His chair was empty for the moment. Beside Emily, Patty shifted on her own seat, hands folded tightly in her lap. Further down, Aaron, from the other hospital, sat next to a former respiratory therapist. On the far side, Dr. Patel leaned back slightly in his chair, arms resting loosely on the tabletop, eyes alert. Elise stood near a screen with a remote in her hand and a stack of files at her elbow. "The purpose of this meeting," Linda said, "is to hear the findings of our internal review and to hear from staff directly. Then we will discuss appropriate action." Her voice carried the tone of someone used to guiding meetings where money was the main topic. Today, the numbers on her agenda were people. Victor entered, then his steps measured his suit, immaculate again. He took his usual seat. For a brief second, his eyes met Emily's. There was no pretense of concern in them, now only calculation and something like disbelief that she was at the same table. Elise clicked the first slide onto the screen. It was not a graph of revenue or patient days. It was a timeline. Dates, short descriptions, names where consent had been given, initials where it had not. She began to speak. Elise spoke without dramatics. She moved down the timeline, her voice even letting the dates and descriptions do the work. The first year of Victor's tenure, a nurse written up after reporting yelling in a hallway. The write-up language on the slide was projected for everyone to see. Exhibits a negative attitude, resistant to feedback. The next instance, a tech demoted after questioning a schedule change that left a unit short-staffed. An email appeared on the screen, the text enlarged. Victor's name at the bottom. I expect my directives to be followed without repeated justification. Then the first documented physical incident. 3 years ago, a nurse named Jenna reported that Mr. Harlan struck her in a hallway, Elise said. The complaint was closed as unsubstantiated. She left the hospital within a week of filing. On the screen, the complaint number appeared. The HR summary filled 2 lines. The line with Jenna's resignation was longer. A few board members shifted in their chairs. Elise continued. Another year, another complaint. A pattern of late schedule changes, sudden poor performance evaluations, transfers to less desirable shifts following conflicts with administration. Over 5 years, we have 27 internal complaints involving Mr. Harlan, she said. 3 resulted in settlements and non-disclosure agreements. The rest were closed without action. Linda looked down at her copy of the report, then back up. Were we informed of these numbers, she asked. Selective cases were presented when there was a potential for legal action, the attorney said. The others were treated as personnel matters. Emily watched the faces around the table. Some flushed, some stayed carefully neutral. Victor's remained still, jaw clenched so tightly a small muscle jumped near his ear. On Friday, Elise said, we had a different set of conditions. The incident occurred in a crowded area. Multiple staff members witnessed the interaction. The patient was awake and able to report her experience. Security and risk management were notified immediately. This allowed for a level of documentation we have not had before. She gestured toward the stack of files. You have in front of you sworn statements from 8 current staff and 4 former staff who directly describe instances of physical or verbal aggression involving Mr. Harlan, she said. You also have supporting documentation from HR, including exit interviews and prior complaints. Linda turned a page. The paper made a soft sound. Have you spoken to staff from his previous positions? One board member asked. Yes, Elise said. We have 3 statements from nurses at St. Raphael's where he served as chief operating officer before coming here. Their descriptions are consistent with what we have heard at Silverline. Raised voice, public humiliation, at least 1 allegation of physical contact. The attorney cleared his throat. These events were not disclosed to us during the hiring process, he said. St. Raphael's did not provide that history in their reference checks. That may be because they were concerned about their own liability, Elise said. Regardless, the effect is the same. A pattern was allowed to move from one institution to another unchecked. Victor leaned forward. This is a character assassination, he said. You are taking the words of people who have always resisted necessary change and painting me as a villain because I demanded results. Elise regarded him. Do you dispute the basic facts, she asked? That you raised your hand toward Ms. Cross? That you have raised your hand toward staff before? I moved my hand, he said. I did not strike her. She knocked me down. You attempted to strike her, Emily said quietly. All eyes turned toward her. She had not spoken during Elise's presentation. Her hands rested loosely on the table. You intended to hit me, she said. I could see it in your shoulder and your wrist. Whether you succeeded is different from whether you meant to. Victor's gaze snapped to her. You think you can sit here in scrubs and tell this board what I meant, he said. You knew exactly what you were doing. You baited me. You wanted this. Emily held his stare. What I wanted, she said, was for a stroke patient to stop shaking. There was no heat in her voice, only a flat truth. Patty's fingers closed around the edge of her chair. Erin looked down at her folded hands and saw that they were no longer shaking as much as they had been when she walked into the room. Linda looked from Victor to Elise. Is there anything else we need to hear before we deliberate? She asked. Elise nodded to the other end of the table. Ms. Williams, she said, if you are ready. Karen Williams stood slowly. She had left Silverline 3 years earlier and had not been back in the building since. Her eyes scanned the faces around the table once, then fixed somewhere in the middle distance, just above their heads. I loved nursing, she said. I wanted to be a nurse since I was 8 years old. I spent 10 years at the bedside before I came to Silverline. I thought I would retire from here. Her hands twisted the strap of her bag as she spoke. After working under Mr. Harlan for 2 years, I left healthcare altogether, she said. I could not walk into another hospital without hearing his voice in my head. I still dream about being at the station and hearing his shoes on the floor behind me. She paused. He did not hit me, she said. He did not have to. He made sure everyone knew that if he decided you were a problem, your life would become miserable. He did not just yell at people, he dismantled them in front of their peers, in front of patients. He made sure we believed no one would stop him. She swallowed. For a long time no one did, she said. Now someone has. You have a choice about what you do with that. She sat down. The room was very quiet for a moment. Linda folded her hands on the table. Thank you, she said. To all of you, we appreciate your honesty. She looked around at the board members. We will now go into executive session, she said. Only board members and council will remain. Everyone else, please wait outside. We will call you back in when we have a decision. Chairs shifted, papers rustled. Emily stood with the others and followed Elise out into the hallway. The door closed behind them with a solid, expensive sound. The hallway had no chairs. People leaned against the walls, stood with arms crossed, checked their phones without reading anything. Patty exhaled long and shaky. How do you feel? Emily asked. Like I just walked through a fire drill and no one told me if the building was actually burning, Patty said. Erin let out a short laugh. At least this time the alarm is not just in our heads, she said. Down the hall, Victor paced a few steps away from the door, his phone in his hand. He was not invited to the executive session either. For the first time in his tenure, a major conversation about the hospital was happening on the other side of a closed door that he could not open. He dialed a number. Voicemail picked up. He hung up without leaving a message. Inside the conference room, the mood had shifted. The polished confidence of financial reports was gone. What remained was a quieter, heavier responsibility. This is not just about whether he keeps his job, one board member said. This is about what we have allowed to happen under our watch. Let us focus on the motion at hand, another said. The findings demonstrate repeated violations of our own policies on workplace conduct. We have credible reports of physical aggression. We have consistent testimony across multiple years. And we have the incident in the ER, Linda said, in front of a patient, involving security, documented in real time. The attorney cleared his throat. From a legal standpoint, retaining him in his position after this report would increase our exposure significantly, he said. Terminating for cause allows us to demonstrate that we do not condone the behavior. So we are making this decision to protect ourselves, a board member said. To protect the hospital, the attorney said, which includes the people who work in it. Linda looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring gleamed against the varnished wood. I sat in that office and praised him for our margins, she said. I did not ask what it cost to get there. No one responded. She straightened. There is a motion before us, she said, to terminate the employment of Victor Harlan, Chief Executive Officer of Silverline Medical Center, for cause effective immediately. No severance. No continuation of benefits beyond what is legally mandated. All in favor. Hands rose around the table, some quickly, some after a pause. None stayed down. Linda's hand was the last to lift. The vote was unanimous. Outside the door opened, Elise stepped into the hallway. Ms. Cross, she said, Ms. Lopez, Dr. Patel, Miss Williams, Miss Aaron, please come back in. They took their seats again, the air in the room feeling different now, as if some hidden tension had snapped. Victor stood near the window. He turned as they entered, searching faces for some sign he could still read in his favor. Linda folded her hands once more. Mr. Harlan, she said. The board has reviewed the findings of the internal investigation and has reached a decision. He straightened shoulders, pulling back. Before you announce anything, I want the chance to respond formally, he said. These are unproven allegations. You are relying on embellished stories and personal grudges. My record speaks for itself. It does, Linda said. The investigation is not based on one account. It is based on multiple corroborating testimonies, documented patterns, and your own behavior in the emergency department on Friday. He opened his mouth. She continued before he could speak. Effective immediately, you are terminated from your position as Chief Executive Officer of Silverline Medical Center for cause, she said. There will be no severance package. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings and then to the exit. The words hung there clear and solid. For a moment, Victor simply stared at her. You cannot be serious, he said. We are, Linda said. You are throwing away the best leader this place has ever had because a couple of oversensitive nurses could not handle discipline, he said. You are surrendering to gossip. No, Linda said. We are acknowledging what we refuse to see. This is not up for further discussion. He looked from face to face, searching for a crack. The board members avoided his eyes or held them briefly, then looked away. The attorney closed his folder. Victor laughed once, a sound with no real amusement in it. You will regret this, he said. When the numbers slide, when your replacement cannot handle the pressure, you think they will thank you for this. No one answered. A knock came at the door. Officer Green stepped in alone this time. Mr. Harlan, he said, I'm here to escort you out. Victor stared at him as if the words were in another language. Then he picked up his phone, slid it into his pocket, and walked to the door. As he passed Emily's chair, his eyes flicked toward her. There was anger there and something else under it that looked like bewilderment, like the expression of a man who had walked into a room expecting applause and found it empty. She did not look away. He stepped into the hall. Green followed. The door closed behind them. From the window, if anyone had cared to watch, they would have seen him a few minutes later crossing the main lobby for the last time. His steps were stiff. His jaw was set. The security officer walked a half step behind him, not touching him, simply present. The volunteers at the front desk looked up. One swallowed. Another glanced at Emily's badge on a poster on the wall that listed Staff of the Month for units over the past year. The automatic doors opened. Late afternoon light poured in. For a heartbeat, Victor was silhouetted against it, suit, sharp shoulders squared. Then he stepped through and was gone. The doors hissed shut, sealing the air-conditioned quiet of the lobby away from the noise of the parking lot. On the 4 North, Patty stood at the nurse's station, looking at the assignment board. She did not see the lobby, but she felt something loosen in her chest. She let out a breath she had been holding for years without fully knowing it. In the ER, Emily walked past bed 7. Dorothy was sitting up, glasses on a crossword puzzle in her hand. Her speech was slower, but her brain was very much present. "Heard there was a change upstairs," Dorothy said, a hint of wryness in her thickened words. Emily checked her IV, her vitals, her smile. "Things are being rearranged," she said. Dorothy nodded. "Good," she said. "About time someone rearranged him." The first lawsuit landed 2 weeks after Victor walked out. It arrived in legal as a thick envelope stamped with the return address of a downtown firm. Inside were pages that smelled faintly of toner and someone else's anger. Names from Elise's notes appeared in black ink. Aaron, Jenna, a coordinator from radiology, words like assault and hostile environment threaded through the paragraphs. By the end of the month, there were 3 more envelopes. In a meeting that ran long into the evening, the hospital's attorneys spread the complaints across a polished table. Outside their windows, the city lights blinked on one by one. Inside, fluorescent bulbs hummed, coffee cooled untouched. "These will not quietly go away," one attorney said. "Nor should they," Elise said from her end of the table. The board agreed to cooperate fully. They did not issue a triumphant press release. They sent a careful internal memo instead, acknowledging prior failures in addressing concerns and a commitment to doing better. It was the closest thing to an apology a hospital could fit into official language. A few miles away, in a smaller, plainer office, a prosecutor flipped through Elise's investigation and the new complaints. She saw the same pattern Elise had seen. Power used as a blunt instrument, people pushed until they broke. She signed her name on several charging documents. The pen moved with the firm stroke of someone used to carving decisions into paper. On a weekday morning, months later, Victor sat at a table in a courtroom that smelled of wax and old air. The judge read the charges aloud. He answered each count in a voice that did not carry as far as he might once have imagined it would. "Guilty," he said. The word sounded small. The sentence was not dramatic. Probation, mandatory counseling, community service, fines that hurt more than he expected when the numbers were laid out. His license troubles came from a different building in a different hearing room, but the feeling was the same. Someone else was finally deciding what he could and could not do. He left the courthouse with his hands empty. No briefcase, no folder, just a set of papers that told him where and when to show up to serve the sentence. At Silverline, life did not stop to watch. Patients still came in. Babies were still born. People still died. The building did not change shape, but the air inside shifted. For a few weeks, staff walked as if waiting for a hand on their shoulder that never came. Conversations in break rooms began with questions. "Is he really gone?" someone would ask. "Yes," another would say. "They fired him. Security walked him out." "And he cannot come back," a third would add, as much to reassure themselves as to inform. The sounds changed. People did not fall silent when the elevator chimed anymore. They looked up, checked who was stepping out, and then kept talking. A new name appeared on the executive directory. Sarah Mitchell, MD, Interim Chief Executive Officer. She had been a physician leader elsewhere in the system, known for long rounds, and questions that started with, "What do you think?" instead of, "Do you know who I am?" Her first morning at Silverline, she did not sit behind the desk on the top floor. She walked the halls. Her shoes were quiet. She wore a blazer and comfortable flats that did not reflect the overhead light. Her badge swung from a lanyard. She stopped at nurses' stations, introduced herself by her first name, and asked, "What is not working?" as often as she asked, "What is going well?" On a 4 North, she paused at the whiteboard. Patty stood nearby, watching with cautious curiosity. "You must be Patty," Sarah said, reading the small print under the charge assignment. "I have heard your name a couple of times in the last week." "I hope in a good way," Patty said. "In a truthful way," Sarah said, "which is the only kind I'm interested in." She held out her hand. Patty hesitated for a fraction of a second, then took it. The grip was firm, warm, not heavy. In a conference room with a view of the parking lot, a new committee met for the first time. The plaque on the door read, "Workplace Safety and Staff Well-Being." It had not been there before. Around the table sat nurses, techs, a unit clerk, a housekeeper, a physician, a social worker, a security officer, and Elise. At the head of the table, not because she had taken the chair, but because everyone had quietly left it for her, sat Emily. She wore navy scrubs and a light sweater over them. Her badge now had an extra line under her name, Assistant Nurse Manager. She looked around the table, met each person's eyes, then folded her hands. "We are not here to write new posters for the walls," she said. "We are here to change what happens in the halls when no one is looking." They talked about reporting systems that did not end at a locked door, about anonymous hotlines that went to a third party instead of an internal voicemail, about training that did more than list rules that actually practiced phrases like, "that is not acceptable," in ways that felt possible to use. Security shared their perspective. Green talked about how it felt to be called into a room and find power directed the wrong way. A housekeeper described being yelled at for mopping the wrong side of a sign. Each story chipped away at a wall that had stood a long time. Over months, small changes took root. Name badges for executives went from being clipped low on jackets to sitting at the same height as clinical staff. Open forums were scheduled for night shift, not just days. A survey went out that asked, "Have you witnessed or experienced intimidation in the last 6 months?" And this time, the responses did not disappear into silence. On the floors, people ran small experiments. At a staff meeting on 4 North, Lauren stood in front of the whiteboard and took a breath. "We are going to try something," she said. "If anyone raises their voice at you in a way that feels wrong, you tell me. If that person is me, you tell someone else on this committee. We will not shrug it off as a bad day. We will write it down and we will respond." Some nurses shifted skeptical. Others looked relieved. Patty glanced at Emily, who gave the smallest nod. It was enough. The metrics caught up slowly. 6 months after Victor's departure, HR pulled turnover numbers. They were still high, but they had dipped. Exit interviews mentioned family moves and school plans more often than fear. Patient satisfaction scores inched upward. Comment cards used phrases like "staff seem calmer," and everyone took time to explain. One elderly man on the cardiac step-down unit told a nurse, "People look less scared here," without knowing why that felt important. Emily's own role grew in fits and starts. She took a nurse manager position on 4 North, then later moved into nursing education, building classes that made new hires stand taller instead of smaller. She spent hours in conference rooms and offices that smelled more like dry erase markers than chlorhexidine. Even so, she tried to keep one foot on the floor she had started on. At least twice a month, she signed herself onto a shift in med-surg or the ER. The computer systems did not always like it when a director-level badge logged into bedside tasks, but she found workarounds. On a late night several years after Victor left, she stood at the nurse's station, hair pulled back, sleeves pushed up, reviewing a chart. The lights were dimmed for patients. The monitors cast soft glows. The hallway was not silent, but the sounds were ordinary. A new graduate badge, still stiff from the printer, approached her with a hesitant look. "Ms. Cross," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Emily," she corrected gently, "what is on your mind?" The young nurse twisted her pen between her fingers. "I had a physician raise his voice at me today," she said. "He was angry about an order I questioned. I told Lauren and she talked to him. He apologized, sort of. It just made me wonder. Would it have been like this before? Would anyone have listened?" Emily thought of the long hallway years earlier, the sound of a slap swallowed by vents and monitors. She thought of hands raised and doors closed, and what it had taken to pry one of them open. "It is different now," she said. "Not perfect, but different. People have more places to go when something feels wrong." The nurse nodded, shoulders easing slightly. "I am glad I started here now," she said. "I like it, most days." She walked away to answer a call light. Down the hall, Patty, now with her own manager badge, adjusted a room assignment on the whiteboard. Her hair had more gray in it. Her movements had less trepidation. Walter's room on 4 North had filled and emptied dozens of times. He had gone home long ago after teaching 3 new nurses how to play bridge and leaving a thank you card that read simply, "To the ones who stand between us and the bad days." In the lobby, the donor wall changed too. A new plaque appeared smaller than the others. Staff Advocacy Fund established in honor of those who spoke up. No one's name was carved underneath. That felt right for something that had always been shared. On a late afternoon, Emily walked out the main doors with her bag over her shoulder. The glass reflected the sky back at her. The air smelled of asphalt and the faint sweetness of trees planted along the sidewalk. Her hand brushed the metal push bar as she stepped through. The door swung open easily. Behind her, the hospital continued its endless cycle. Alarms and laughter, bad news and good, the familiar mix. Ahead of her, the parking lot stretched out in rows. Keys jingled softly in her hand. Somewhere in the middle of all that space, the memory of one man on his knees on a tile floor grew smaller, not because it had been forgotten, but because of everything that had been built since he left. She walked to her car, the gravel under her shoes crunching in a steady, quiet rhythm, and did not look back until she reached for the handle and the glass caught the building's reflection once more. Her fingers brushed his again as they began to clear the table. This time, the contact was not part of a performance. It was an accident they did not rush to correct. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.